dudes and dudettes. How are you guys? This is Chazzy and welcome back to Cinema Chazzy, the segment on this channel where I review the many movies that I watch, even if they're part of a very large saga consisting of multiple movies, you know. And today, oh boy, today we are finally going to be concluding that saga, or at the very least, a good portion of that saga. Let's say this is concluding maybe 33% of it, you know, because I have been reviewing the entire original Star Wars saga over the past few weeks, you know, starting off with, of course, A New Hope. And many videos later, I am finally reaching the climax of that, you know, the movie that closed off the chapter and bridged the saga completely, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, which I will say continues to be to this day my absolute favorite Star Wars movie, whether it's the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, the sequel trilogy that Disney put together, you know. It is still to this day the best Star Wars movie, in my opinion, you know. It's my personal favorite because it's very nostalgic, you know. It was the first Star Wars movie that I ever saw in theaters when I was still becoming a fan, so it was a very good closing, a very good closing chapter, you know, to the entire saga up until that point. It was released in 2005. 3 years after Attack of the Clones, you know, and it actually had an initial budget of $113 million, so just about the same amount as the other two movies in the prequel trilogy, you know, which had $115 million each, but it went on to gross $868 million in total, and that is with not just gross revenue, but also merchandising and additional material and that kind of thing, you know. And George Lucas originally started production. He started putting together the script while the last movie was still in production, you know. They started filming in 2003, and it was a very rigorous process, you know. It was a really tough movie. The story picks up 3 years after Attack of the Clones, where now there are new threats looming on the horizon, you know. The Republic and the Jedi Order are trying really hard to maintain peace and balance within the galaxy, but there is a new enemy in the form of General Grievous, you know, representing the CIS droid army. And the Jedi are spread across the galaxy in this full-scale war against the Separatists, you know. And then Obi-Wan and Anakin go on a mission to capture Grievous, this and that, you know. But there are some disturbing and unsettling occurrences, you know. Anakin is married to Padme, and they are expecting a child, which they later find out are twins, you know. And then, you know, Anakin is sent to spy on Chancellor Palpatine, you know, who has become a very suspicious figure in the political scene. He is secretly a Sith Lord, and he begins to manipulate Anakin to join the dark side, which is what we see towards the final act of the movie, you know. It is a very climactic film through and through, you know, very dramatic, and honestly, it could actually be considered one of the darkest movies in the entire Star Wars saga, because I mean, Anakin becoming a Sith Lord has far-reaching consequences for the galaxy, you know, as we see. And the movie gained a lot of praise for the story direction, you know, and also the emotional weight behind it, you know. There was just so many different story arcs, you know, that really focused a lot on the character development, which I think was really cool, you know. There was a very good story, the very mature tone, the action sequences, everything balanced out. Everything balanced the other factor out to give it pretty much a flawless execution. The actors were very well cast, you know. Pretty much the same actors from the last movie came back. There was a little bit of criticism directed towards the film's dialogue, and particularly Hayden Christensen playing Anakin, you know. I personally didn't think Anakin was too bad. I didn't think Hayden was too bad as Anakin, but I guess maybe I can understand why he got the criticism. A friend of mine said recently that he actually said that he believes that it's the way Anakin was written and not the way he was actually portrayed by the actor, but still, we're gonna get to that later. Very good movie, you know. I can't, man. I probably said this like 4 times already. My favorite one so far. It made me cry the first time, you know. I almost freaking weeped and sobbed, you know. Freaking awesome. And it actually holds a few records, you know, for box office, you know, because it had become the second highest grossing Star Wars film in the entire world at the time that it was released, you know. Became the highest grossing film in America of that year, and the second highest grossing film worldwide of the same year, you know. And also, it still holds right now the record for the highest opening day gross on a Thursday, you know, where it made $50 million. But before I continue and talk a little bit about the plot, let's take a look at the first clip here from Revenge of the Sith.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
Is it possible to learn this power?
Not from a Jedi.
The Council wants you to report on all the Chancellor's dealings.
That's treason.
We are at war, Anakin.
Now, when George Lucas began putting together, the concept for the third Star Wars movie, which would, like I said before, bridge the gap, he wanted it to have elements of a romantic tragedy, which would build the basis for the evolution, the transformation from Anakin into Darth Vader for the rest of the trilogy, the rest of the movies, the saga. So it did have many elements. It was very sad. It was very, very moody, That's why I think that it's, at least compared to all of the other Star Wars movies that came before it, even the ones that came after, it is very, very emotional. It's very heavy, and it starts off showing Anakin and Obi-Wan still getting along. They're at like pretty much the tail end of the Clone Wars, and they're going towards General Grievous's flagship. They infiltrate, they find him, they try to capture him, but he escapes. There are a few cool sequences. They do fight Count Dooku, for the first time since Episode 2. There was a rematch. However, Anakin gets the upper hand and he actually kills Count Dooku while Palpatine manipulates him into doing it, And just the act alone of killing a disarmed prisoner, is already complicated for a Jedi, and it starts to already, see the idea in his head that sometimes killing is justified. It's a very evil act, but they just kind of brush it off temporarily, And then they escape, they go to Coruscant, and Anakin meets up with Padme, One thing leads to another. Eventually, we find out that Padme is actually pregnant, and it gets harder to hide their love from the Council, but whatever, semantics. Obi-Wan goes to Utapau to find Grievous. He finds him, and they fight in a series of really cool action sequences, very nice set pieces there. They fight, and then the Grievous reveals that he actually has 4 arms, 1 lightsaber in each of them, so it's freaking crazy, A very decent challenge for Obi-Wan. But of course, the Jedi Master gets the upper hand, and he defeats Grievous by shooting him, with the blaster in the chest, and it's kind of weird. I mean, you kind of expected something involving a lightsaber, but still, very good epic ending to Grievous. But then Obi-Wan says, "So uncivilized," which is true. Then, of course, more and more events play out. We actually see parallelly Yoda on the planet Kashyyyk, trying to assist the Wookiees against the droids, And then, parallel to all of that, Anakin begins to be manipulated by Palpatine to join the dark side of the Force because he finds out that Palpatine is a Sith Lord. But he starts to kind of woo him with the idea of saving Padme, because Anakin has been having dreams of Padme dying in childbirth, and he wants to prevent that. So Palpatine coaxes him into joining him because he has the power to save those that he loves from dying, Then he finds out that he's a Jedi, that he's the Sith Lord. Then Mace Windu tries to intervene, the Jedi, and he actually cuts off Mace Windu's hand, allowing Palpatine to electrocute him and send him out the window, Meanwhile, Order 66 has been executed, which is this regime, this protocol in the mind of all of the clone troopers that actually tells them to kill off their Jedi generals, for some reason. I guess maybe it's like some chip hardwired into their brain, Although it has been said before in Star Wars lore that they have the option of not obeying, Not sure how it works, but all the Jedi start to be wiped out in the galaxy, All the while, Obi-Wan and others are trying to escape, While Anakin becomes a Sith apprentice to Darth Sidious, who's actually Palpatine's real name, And he becomes Darth Vader. A very epic scene, very emotional change of direction, And Anakin starts killing Jedi, even younglings, He believes that what he's doing is going to help him save Padme because he is desperate to save her life, And then the Jedi start to get wiped out, the Jedi Temple starts to burn and crumble, all the Jedi go on the run. And even Yoda fights Darth Sidious, he fights the Emperor, which is a very epic scene. We see 2 very badass characters duking out with lightsabers and the Force and stuff, Very nice, but unfortunately Yoda loses the fight, and he decides to go into exile, he just, that's when he escapes to Dagobah. And then we see the final fight, which is between Anakin and Obi-Wan, which is the best part of the movie, no doubt. One of the most pivotal moments in the entire Star Wars saga, and the fight between them is very aggressive, it's very rough, it's freaking crazy. A lot of amazing lightsaber techniques here and there, Anakin now being Darth Vader, being more in tapped, let's say, tapping more into his anger. This is after he choked out Padme out of anger, and she's there fainting, And then he fights Obi-Wan, It's a very epic, extensive battle here, and then it goes through the entire planet of Mustafar, the lava planet. And then eventually one thing leads to another, and Obi-Wan gets the upper hand because Anakin tries to jump to the high ground, but he cuts off his arm and his legs and just leaves him there to burn, And of course, after a few emotional dialogue, we see that Obi-Wan leads him to his fate, but the Emperor comes and finds him still alive, And then that's when he takes him to the little lab of sorts, to start rebuilding him and putting him back together. Parallelly, simultaneously we see Padme giving birth to the twins while Anakin literally physically becomes Darth Vader. We see him put on the Darth Vader suit, you know, with the labored breathing. Very awesome. But Padme does ironically end up dying in childbirth after giving birth to twins, Luke and Leia. So in case you missed it, there is the parallel there. She was going to die in childbirth, but the vision that Anakin was having was himself killing her, you know? So it's freaking crazy how that works, you know? Very emotional twist, you know? Anakin screams out no as Darth Vader because he felt cheated by the loss of his wife, and that's it. Begins the events, you know, that we see into episode 4. Obi-Wan takes the twins. He takes Luke rather to his relatives in Tatooine, Han and Beru, and then Leia goes to be raised by Senator Bail Organa and his wife, and she eventually becomes the Leia that we see in episode 4. And that's pretty much it. Gonna wrap up a little bow on that. And before we talk about the production, let's take a look at another clip here from Revenge of the Sith.
I need your help, son. I'm appointing you to be my personal representative on the Jedi Council.
You are on this council, but we do not grant you the rank of master.
What? Obi-Wan and the council don't trust me.
Learn to know the dark side of the Force, and you will achieve a power greater than any Jedi.
You're under arrest, Chancellor.
Are you threatening me, Master Jedi?
The character of Anakin was actually rewritten several times, you know, throughout the course of production, you know, especially after principal photography wrapped up, you know, because they had to, George Lucas wanted to really portray an actual, let's say, tangible reason for him to go to the dark side. And despite a lot of different rewrites, eventually it was decided that his primary reason for turning to the dark side of the Force was to save Padme, which if you stop to think about it is really stupid. I mean, basically what you're saying is that the guy turned to the dark side of the Force despite being a Jedi who saved so many people and went on so many diplomatic missions and was revered as the chosen one. The only reason he joined the bad guys was because he was horny, basically, you know. He had a boner for his wife, you know. It's like, I don't want to lose my sex thing, you know. I don't want to lose my lady, you know. The entire galaxy could fall and everybody could die. Thousands of star systems could be obliterated, but I want my wife, you know. That's pretty much it. That's one of the reasons why I think that the dialogue was so criticized, you know, because I mean, dude, you're giving the guy who would go on to become literally one of the most tragic anti-heroes of all time in movie history, become one of the most badass villains with what is supposed to be a very emotional story arc and eventual end to him, you know. The only reason Darth Vader exists was because his wife was dying, you know, and he's the one who caused it, you know. So it's really stupid, but still, it still came out pretty okay. And now in terms of the actual cinematography, George Lucas used this thing called a V technique, you know, for some of the scenes where he would use two different cameras, camera A and camera B, to capture different shots of the same exact scene playing out, so he could have the same scene from different angles, and then it would make it a lot easier to edit. He would actually use this technology to send the footage to the editors on the same day that it was shot, a process which before would take about 24 hours or so. So it was really nice. Hayden had to bulk up a little bit to play Anakin because Lucas requested that he kind of showed the physical transformation of Anakin as he aged and matured more, you know. So he was working out, you know, several hours a day, eating many meals, and he actually peaked. He went from 160 pounds to 185 pounds, you know, to portray Anakin in episode 3. And he and Ewan, who played Obi-Wan, they were training so frequently, you know, so excessively for their lightsaber duel, you know, because they were working with stunt coordinator Nick Gillard again from the other movies, you know. And then he came on and helped them rehearse, and they rehearsed for so many hours to the point where they memorized their moves with the lightsabers, you know. It was really cool. I saw the behind the scenes for Revenge of the Sith. It was really awesome the way that it was shown, you know. They really did train for hours and hours and hours, man, and it was freaking crazy. But still, you know, sometimes it would be filmed in a certain way where there were certain instances that were actually where they took away, they increased the velocity of particular, they would change the speed at which it was filmed so it could seem like certain attacks had different velocity, you know, like it was faster. And they actually did all of their stunts. There were no stunt doubles, so it was actually the actors fighting, you know. So I thought that was a very cool little instance there, you know. And in terms of special effect, you know, oh yeah, by the way, Anakin and Darth Vader, right? It became the first instance where the actor in any Star Wars movie played Darth Vader, you know, with the same suit. The first film in which Anakin and Darth Vader were played by the same actor, because Hayden actually had to beg for George Lucas to let him get in the suit, you know. They actually had to make a custom suit to fit Hayden, you know, because originally they were going to get a tall actor to portray him in the suit like they did with David Prowse in the originals, you know. know, so he literally had to beg Lucas to make a suit for him to fit. So when you see Anakin Hayden Christensen, the actor, with the helmet being lowered on him, that actually is the same actor, you know, and it actually really is him there portraying Vader, which I think was really cool. What a moment for Hayden Christensen, huh? That's like the high point of his career, man, you know? It was freaking awesome. And also, the special effects, right? There were a lot of different special effects in the movie, you know, when they were creating certain elements like Kashyyyk, they were actually going with the limestone mountains in Thailand to create the background and then splice in the digital parts, you know. The production crew was actually very fortunate to see the eruption of Mount Etna, you know, in Italy, which is what they used to create the compositions in the Mustafar scene, you know. In Mustafar, there were some volcanoes erupting, so that's actually where they got that from, you know. It was really nice. A lot of the scenes were shot in Fox Studios, Australia and Sydney, but still there were a few practical locations as well, you know, so I thought that was really nice. And so the special effects, right? Now, this movie here, actually, I do believe to this day has the world record for the most amount of special effects in any film, with 2,151, you know, digital effects added, you know, which of course was all done by LLM, Industrial Light and Magic, and it was freaking crazy, you know. There was a lot of model work and CGI and also practical digital effects, you know. Everything came together to create a very amazing work of art. I actually thought the movie was really awesome in this aspect here, you know. And also, here we go. There is a really cool scene here. The DVD featurette actually says that the film required 910 artists, you know, to create the special effects, which was covering 70,441 man hours to create 49 seconds of footage just for the Mustafar duel alone, which I think is really cool and I wanted to share for you guys, you know. So yeah, essentially that's a little bit of the production, you know. There was a lot more, you know. The costume design was amazing. The art direction was really cool, you know. The visual effects were obviously the best part of the movie, you know. And just to give you an idea, pretty much a large amount of it, just like Attack of the Clones, was all done digitally, you know. So that's it. Let me show you guys one more clip here before I continue with another part.
Every single Jedi is now an enemy of the Republic. Do what must be done. Do not hesitate. Show no mercy.
Who could have done this?
Twisted by the dark side, young Skywalker has become.
Let me just recount something here, do a little bit of a retcon of something that I tried to say, but I kind of mixed up the details here. When Hayden and Ewan were fighting, you know, it was actually them, and a lot of the duel that we see on screen was actually shot in real time, so that's really how fast they were going. But there were single frames of that duel that were actually removed to give the impression of faster strikes, you know. So that's why I just wanted to correct myself there because it came off a little weird the first time. Let's talk about the cast, right? It largely remained the same with Ewan McGregor still playing Obi-Wan Kenobi, although now a Jedi Master and with a shorter haircut, you know, a bit of a longer beard too. He is a much wiser Jedi now, you know. He's really had more experiences with Anakin, you know, many different adventures that we didn't see. He has become a best friend and mentor to Anakin, you know. So, and of course Anakin played again by Hayden Christensen, you know, a little bit older and more mature now. And I actually think that Hayden portrayed him very well, you know. I personally think that he is, like, the character of Anakin is supposed to embody the characteristics of a fallen hero, you know, and Hayden really did transmit that in a way. You can tell that he was troubled at times, but for some reason, everybody zeroes in on Hayden Christensen. Why is everybody picking on Hayden? I still, to this day, don't think his acting was very bad. Maybe the character himself was poorly written. The dialogue did come off as cringy at times, just like an Attack of the Clones, but it's not the actor's fault, man, you know. I don't hate him, you know. I actually think that nobody could have played Anakin better than him, you know. I already will always see him as Anakin, you know, no matter what. So, and of course he was secretly married to Padme Amidala, who was played by Natalie Portman, you know, and she is still a senator of Naboo, and she is pregnant with his children, you know, implying that they had sex at least once, so they were really getting busy in the Coruscant apartment, you know. She kind of feels like a giggly schoolgirl at times, so the character development for Padme really didn't feel too well, and the way that she became a whiny little, almost kind of like a brat at the end, you know, crying her eyes out because her husband doesn't love her anymore or whatever, you know. A very, very dissatisfying end to that character arc there, you know. But still, semantics. Ian McDiarmid comes back to play Emperor Palpatine, who we find out now is Darth Sidious, or the Emperor, you know, who has a very, very interesting backstory. You know, there's actually a lot more to him. You know, he was secretly a Sith Lord for many years, was able to infiltrate the Senate to become a very powerful authoritative figure, you know, who was given emergency powers. So basically manipulating the war, the Clone Wars, you know, to fit his own narrative, you know. So I actually think it was really nice the way that Ian portrayed him, you know. So yeah, he manipulates Anakin to come to the dark side. This now, you guys already know the story. We had, of course, Samuel Jackson playing Mace Windu for what would unfortunately be the final time, because he dies, you know, a Jedi Master and senior member of the Jedi Council with this trademark purple lightsaber, you know. Giving him a bit more screen time, you know, was really cool. He was the one Jedi who survived the onslaught against the Emperor, you know, when he was all CGI crazed, you know. So yes, then we had Jimmy Smits as Bail Organa, you know, who was also very praised for his performance as him, you know, who was a senator from Alderaan. In case that name sounds familiar, Alderaan is the planet that gets destroyed by the Empire in episode 4, you know, freaking crazy. I think that's actually where he dies too. Then we have, of course, Christopher Lee coming back to play Count Dooku, or Darth Tyrannus, you know, who is the apprentice to Darth Sidious and the leader of the Separatist army, who is unfortunately killed by Anakin, you know. In a very brutal way. He gets his hands cut off and then his head. It's freaking crazy. We have, of course, why do I even bother? I'm not even gonna, should I say them? Because we already know who they are, but why the hell not? Made it this far, right? Anthony Daniels as C-3PO. We already know the one actor who played the same character in every single Star Wars movie alongside his buddy Kenny Baker, who played R2-D2. Have a little bit more character arc here, always very cute. And of course, Frank Oz as Yoda. Let's just get that out of the way, as the voice of Yoda. Of course, Yoda is completely CGI in this movie. And now let's go to the final stretch here, you know. Very well casted movie, a very nice ensemble cast who created a really cool mythology across the trilogy, you know. And I am going to be giving Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith a very resounding 10 out of 10. The first Star Wars movie in this epic 6 video long review series of mine to get a 10 out of 10, because I love Revenge of the Sith. It is my personal favorite. I love it so much. I will never stop loving it. It to this day holds up really well despite the glaring flaws, you know. I really liked it a lot and I refuse to ever give it anything under that. I can rewatch it as many times as I can and I still don't find any fault in it that would be sufficient enough to decrease that rating. A perfect, flawless 10 out of 10 across the board. I love it so much, man, and holy freaking crap, I kind of feel like watching it again right now. So yes, I am pretty sure I covered everything, you know. Very good movie, very impactful story, very, you know, dark and mature themes, you know, that really make you think and see how the old Republic fell, how the Jedi Order was pushed into isolation, into hiding, and it's setting up, in my opinion at least, very perfectly the events for A New Hope and everything else that came afterwards, you know. There was a lot of other tie-in Star Wars lore that Disney discarded because they're a bunch of douches, but still, it's all there if you want to read about it, you know, and it's all good, man. No matter what Disney wants to put in the Legends canon, I still think that this Star Wars will always be canon, but whatever. Maybe in the future when I do something else Star Wars related, I will come back and review the Disney trilogy, you know, and some of the new shows like The Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett, you know, Rebels, whatever. But for now, this is what you guys are gonna get. I am exhausted. I have been reviewing a bunch of movies lately and I just want to stop. So let me know in the comments below what you think about this, you know, if you agree with my rating and if you like Star Wars, and if you don't, if you've never seen this movie, you gave yourself a bunch of spoilers, but thank you for the view time anyway. And let me know if you happen to like this video, please go ahead and give it a like, and also subscribe to my channel if you subscribe to my channel, because I release videos every single day. And while you're at it, hit the notification bell too so I can know exactly what time they come out. And that's it, guys. That's it. Holy crap, I'm tired. I am exhausted, but it was worth it. It was worth it. This is Chazzy signing out for now, and as always, I will see you guys in the next video. May the Force truly, genuinely be with you, and roll the outro screen for the final time in this Star Wars related thing.